We do. We think we can do life by ourselves, but we're not supposed to. If you're reading the book of Genesis where God created all this stuff, he said it was all good, and then he created man. He's like, uh-oh, that's not good. Maybe he should have created woman first. I don't know. But he created man, and he said, oh, they can't be by themselves. They can't take care of themselves. Whatever. I don't know. But he said it wasn't good for us to be alone. Why? We need each other. We're created for that purpose, to do life with other people. There's a great story in the Bible with Moses. He was the one that led the Israelites out of Egypt, out of the bondage of slavery, into the promised land. And then they were getting into Canaan. They're getting ready they had to battle a little bit for some of the lands that God had given them. And they were fighting. One of their first battles was against the Amalekites, And God told Moses, take the staff I gave you. Now, this staff meant a lot. It was a staff that became a snake in front of Pharaoh. It's a staff that he dipped it, put it in the Nile River, and it turned the whole river into blood. And he took the staff and he actually popped it into the Red Sea, and it opened up and they crossed over. He took that staff and he hit some rocks, and water came out when they were in the desert. So this staff meant a lot. It represented God's power to the Israelites. And he told Moses, take that staff, go to the top of the hill while Joshua and the army are fighting the Amalekites. Hold that staff up. And if you do that, you will have victory. So Moses is probably in his 80s or 90s, and he's up on the top of his mountain, and he's holding the staff. After a while, he's getting a little tired. So he sits down, takes a break, and the tides turn, because before, Joshua and the army was beating the Amalekites. As soon as he sat down and put his arm down with the staff, it flipped. The Amalekites started beating Joshua and the Israelites. So what happened? It's so cool. Aaron and they came together. And they went up there and they made a little seat, and they put Moses on it, and they held both of Moses' arms, one on each side, so he could hold that staff up. And what happened was, because they did that, Joshua and the armies defeated the Amalekites, which were more numerous than the Israelite army, and they routed them, it says, afterwards. Now, I think what that shows you, even Moses, the great deliverer, needed friends. He needed help. We all need each other. All you have to do is look at the first church in the book of Acts 2. You can look at it in chapter 2. You can look at the first church. What happened? Jesus ascends to heaven after his death and resurrection. He stays around about 40 days. He heads out to heaven, and then what does he do? The Holy Spirit comes, right? And touches all these guys, all these apostles, and they go out and they blow the church up, man, in a good way. And it says here, if you look at an Acts, it says, those who believed were baptized and added to the church. They joined with other believers and committed themselves to the apostles' teaching and fellowship. They worshiped together regularly at the temple, and they met in small groups. Now, this church went from just a few people, about 120 or so, to over 100,000 or so in Jerusalem. Like half the town, half the city started following Jesus. It's amazing. So what did they do? There's no way they could have a facility for it. They met in small groups. They met in life groups in homes. And they ministered to each other. If you go on and read, they gave to each other. They served each other. They prayed for each other. They loved each other. They were there for each other. Wow. So one of the things you need to consider is joining a life group. And I can say this till I'm blue in the face, but don't just take my word for it. There was a survey done recently about people that are involved in groups. And a young gal said this: I heard about Jesus at church, and I gave my life, I committed my life to him. I got saved. But it wasn't until I joined a life group that I learned to become a Christian by seeing it in action. She started seeing people living their life in the way that a Christian should live. And she started seeing that model, and she emulated that, and she grew, and she became, she says, a better person, a better Christian because of what she saw in that life group. Another guy said this: when you allow yourself to open up and be vulnerable, you allow others to speak into your life. That's so powerful. We think we got this. Oh, I can handle this. I got this. I don't need any help. That's just the opposite of what we're supposed to do. I know the idea of being dependent or even vulnerable is scary, but it's also extremely fruitful and rewarding in your lives. Even Jesus, going back to his life, even Jesus gave us an example. After the Last Supper, he prayed, and he took the guys to the garden to pray because he knew what was coming. He says, come with me. Then he took Peter, James, and John, and he said this to him. It's powerful. This is Jesus. My soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. Stay here with me. Jesus being very vulnerable. He knew what was happening. He was within a few hours about to die a brutal death. And yes, he knew the physical pain, but he was more, I think, grieved because at that point when he became sin, when all the sins of the world, past, present, and future, put on him, and he was crucified and died for us and paid the price for us, that he was going to be separated from his Father for a while. And that was the hardest thing for him to accept. So it's important to be open to that idea of being vulnerable. Even Jesus did it. So what happens in a life group? Here's some things I just threw out there just to take a look at. You develop friendships. You almost have an extended family. There's people that go on vacations together from groups. I've seen it over and over. They do other things, or they're so intertwined and become the best of friends. And it's so awesome to see in our church family. You encourage each other because, who hasn't had a tough day in their life, right? And you learn accountability. I love it when somebody comes to me in love and says, hey, Tom, and corrects me in the right way with the right heart. Gives me the truth and doesn't beat me up, but says, hey, Tom, the way you said this to that person probably wasn't good. Because sometimes that happens. I've messed up. And okay. But I know they're doing it because they love and care for me, not because they want to control me or beat me up. No, because they want me to be better. And I was like, thank you. Because they had the guts to do it. Ask questions about God. It's hard sometimes in this setting to even have a conversation because we're busy, we're listening, or music and all kinds of things going on. But in a smaller group, in a life group, you can say, hey, man, I read this in the Bible. What does that mean? I don't know. Can you help me? You can ask questions. You can ask for support and advice. I don't know how many times people, because we have older kids, say, my kid's a teenager. What do I expect? And I laugh. No. Because I've been through it. And they're looking for me like, help me. And I can give them some advice and support. We can be there for each other. Here's one that's really powerful. We realize that we're all similar. There's only a handful of things or so that we all deal with, struggle or challenge, whatever in life. And it's the same stuff. I've been counseling for probably 10 years or more with people in life. And it's always about the same handful of things that we struggle with. We're all similar. Sometimes we think, oh my gosh, nobody has the same struggles I do, or nobody's dealing with, or has ever dealt with what I'm dealing with. No. And when you get in a group setting like that, you realize, man, we're all the same. And last, one of the most important is you pray together. There's something powerful with a small group of people. It says we're two more gathered, right? He's there. And we pray together. We block out the world. We block out the noise. We block out everything. We just pray. We ask God to bless us. We ask God to lead us. We ask God to nurture us. Something powerful about that. So I'm going to ask you to take a step of faith and sign up today. Go online or in the back of your connection card. You don't know which group today, but you want to do it. Check off this. I think there's a box. And we'll find you a group. We'll help you get to one. I was with a guy recently, about 2 weeks ago. And he came to our church for years, and he was very plugged in and kind of faded away. And I was like, man, I miss you. So let's grab breakfast. So we finally connected. We're talking. And I was like, and he was telling me how great his life was. And I said to him, hey, when are we going to see you at church? People miss you. He goes, I'll get around to it. I'll get there someday. I'm like, he forgot how just a few years ago, he was desperate for God and things weren't going well. And so he's blessed now and he's forgetting God, and it just hurts my heart. And another gentleman, it's kind of hard to say this one, but this is a few years ago. He was going through a really, really tough struggle, really hard time, really challenging situation. And a lot of us were trying to help and trying to, pray and be there. And he wouldn't let us in. And I remember just feeling this really strong tug one night, like, hey, man, I reached out. Let's get together. Let's get the coffee right now. Let's do something. And no, I got this. I'm all set. And the next day I found out that he took his life. And it hurts because it didn't have to be that way. I'm not saying that if you don't get in a life group, you're going to do that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that he thought he could take care of it by himself, and we're not supposed to. And it hurts my heart even today thinking about it because it didn't have to end that way. It could have been different. He could still be here today with us. So again, I really want you to consider plugging in and getting to get to know some people. I'm sitting here, my brother Mark over here. He probably remembers this, but the first time I went to life group was at his house many years ago, probably 20 years ago. And we're buddies, and we've been buddies for years. But I know that if I needed something, I could make a phone call to that gentleman right there. He'd be there. Wouldn't even ask me a question. And vice versa. It's not even about, anything other than we're here for each other. We love each other. We care. We're going to be there. That's special. But you can't put a price on that. There's nothing that's worth that, period. And you will have that. I know you will if you plug in.